Hey guys, so I want to make a guide on my full Lightning Strike Surfcaster / Blind Prophet. These are two very strong ascendancies for the Shadow and upcoming league. Now I want to go over everything about the build, which one you should play and why. I'll quickly show a map showcase. So this is a very high-end character because the league's come out so short. I only had the time to make a full budget character and show it off. But I have videos from past league and all that. It's really easy to see what the character does in no gear and what a very high-end gear. Either way, I am using Nimmies in this showcase though. Because of Blind Prophet, you actually will have Nimmies, although a slightly worse version, but it's actually just as strong of a single target, which I will go over as well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone has seen Lightning Strike by now. This build is, fair to say, probably the best overall skill in the current game. It is extremely strong, extremely fast, extremely high damage. There's nothing bad about the skill. It is just insane, right? So yeah, anyway, very quick map showcase. At the high end, as you can see here, this build is stupidly fast, and this character is going to be pretty similar to that of the Blind Prophet. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. I can do a Legion real quick as well if you want to see that, but yeah. Lightning Strike is good. I think everyone knows that. There's not much to say there. Very strong character. We'll just quickly do the Legion. But obviously, very good Legion farmer as well. Of course, this is very high gear, like I said, but yeah. Anyway, that's what Lightning Strike is. It's obviously less insane on lower budget gear. But yeah, this was my Necrocelos character that I made in the Necrocelos League. And this is Warden, which is pretty similar to that of Blind Prophet / Surfer. This is not Slayer. Slayer's like a whole different build. So yeah, let's go over this whole build. I have the full POB, also the full leveling guide as well. And I will make a separate video for the leveling. The leveling is kind of unique. But yeah, this build is absolutely insane. And that is because of Blind Prophet. So let's talk about that first. So Blind Prophet has to be the strongest early game ascendancy I have ever seen in this game. It is absolutely ridiculous. I think for day 1 or day 2, this ascendancy is roughly giving you close to 2.5 times damage, 150% more damage, and it's nailing off this crit node right here and the return proj. These two nodes are just an obscene amount of power for early on. Eventually the crit node falls off because you can't get crit on weapon, you can get crit cap easily, but for day 1, in an example, in this PUB right here, on my starter setup that has 37 million DPS, we have a 2 mod claw with crafted attack speed. This is double tier 2. So this is this extremely bad claw, extremely easy to get, and you're already at stupid amount of damage, and this is not even including the tincture. With the tincture, this goes up to 57 million, and this is still not even counting valid Lightning Strike, just your regular Lightning Strike. And overall, the rest of this gear is, yeah, pretty low budget, as you can see here. No implicits on this helmet, 3 mods plus craft. Chest does have 2 implicits, but this is once again 3 mods plus craft. Gloves, 3 mods plus craft, 1 implicit. Actually, 6 mod is probably the best piece here, I guess, but obviously you don't need, 35% movement speed or crafted energy shield. Marlene's, which is probably gonna be 2 divines or so, I assume in the first few days, is a tier 3 unique, so it's not too rare, but it is pretty popular. Double attainments, once again, probably 2 divines each. So these are probably the most expensive pieces here. But also, it's fairly easy to get, and the price does rapidly go down over the league. And then a very simple belt, 4 mods plus crafted mod. So overall, I would say this character is probably around 15 divines if we don't include a Dying Sun. You don't need Dying Sun, I just have it here. So, if you do get it, it is good to use, but you don't need it for the build to function whatsoever. So yeah, probably around 15 divines for this character, maybe even less. And with Tincture up, you're over 57 million DPS, roughly 70 million with VLS. So yeah, who would have thought Lightning Strike is extremely strong. It's meta for a reason. It is overall probably the best skill in the game, just for from start to finish. It does everything. You can do pinnacle bosses, tier 17s, row exalt strat, whatever you want to do, you can do it all on Lightning Strike MF even as well, which is what I'm going to do as well. And this damage is thanks to the Blind Prophet. Because of that 12% base crit, you can get a way better weapon, so when you crit your weapon, so it makes it easier to get, and because of Nimmies for free. So what is Directionless and why is it so strong? So projectiles are firing in a random direction. This is actually a positive for clearing, because now you don't have to aim when clearing. You can just, click anywhere and your projectiles go everywhere. It feels really good for clearing. Now, its projectiles have 50% chance to return to you. Now, this part is worse than Nimmies, but the effectiveness of single target stays the same because this projectiles have a chance to return to you is per projectile. So if you're shooting 7 projectiles, which you do with this ascendancy, each projectile out of those 7 have a 50% chance to return, and as long as 1 returns, that whirlwind projectile can hit the boss again for that double hit effect, the double damage that enemies gets you. I know some people look at this and they think, oh, it's 50% of enemies, but that's not really true. It's actually the exact same value as enemies for single target. It is worse than enemies for clear speed, but for single target, this is straight up doubling your damage if you're utilizing it correctly, which a skill like Lightning Strike does, a skill like bow skills do. So yeah, for 2 Ascendancy points, this actually just doubles your damage, which is obscene power for any attack projectile skill in the game. Once again, assuming your build can utilize it, which Lightning Strike certainly can. And then Careless +2 projectiles, this vastly helps when you have random projectiles. When you have random proj, you really want plus projectiles, so why the Dying Sun also helps, but not mandatory. So without Dying Sun, you have 7 projectiles. With Dying Sun, you're 9. You can also get more projectiles on your clusters if you want, but 9's already quite a bit. But yeah, extra projectiles also helps to make sure you're always hitting your target. But with Nimis, you're pretty much always up in range anyway, so you're always like right next to the boss. There is a certain way to play Lightning Strike though, if you are unaware. So Lightning Strike has this double hit mechanic, and to use this double hit mechanic, you need +1 strike. So you can get +1 strike on your attack mastery, or you can get +1 strike on your gloves. You do need +1 strike somewhere though. And because of this, essentially, Lightning Strike hits the ground, and a strike skill also has a clone that hits the target, but it won't hit the target if you're on top of the enemy. So if this totem pole right here is the enemy, for example, and I was on top of the enemy, I won't get a double hit, I'm losing half of my damage. So you have to stand a little bit far away, it's not that far, and you attack, and both you and your clone will attack, giving you double the amount of damage, and all those projectiles will return. Now when a projectile returns, only one of the X amount of projectiles that are returning can do damage. Essentially, when you're playing properly with enemies, you're getting 4 times the Lightning Strike DPS, that's all you have to know. So this 14.2 million becomes 57.8 million. And just so you're aware, when you're double hitting, when you have both the beam coming down in front of you and the beam coming down the boss, it's extremely obvious to see. You can test out yourself in like standard right now. But yeah, you want to make sure you're always double hitting, and with the next projectiles with Nimis, that it's double hitting again, giving you 4 times damage. Now that's the Ascendancy node. For the profits, not that extreme. You can go shapeless or lightless. I have seen some Abyss Stack and Jewel Pause, but none look that impressive, honestly. Maybe I'll still do it like at Adorn value, maybe mirror level, but early on it really didn't look that impressive. So shapeless is quite nice because elusive is avoid damage, that's like essentially more avoidance, and movement speed, which isn't that big of a deal, so yeah. But I might still go lightless on this build. I'm kind of undecided, just because shapeless, all you're really getting from shapeless is to avoid damage, because movement speed is not that relevant on Lightning Strike, because you use Whirling Blades to move, and Whirling Blades does not require any movement speed whatsoever. This is why, like, this PoB has very low movement speed, but it doesn't matter because yeah, you have an insane amount of attack speed on this build. If you have a lot of attack speed, and Whirling Blades is extremely fast. So yeah, this is why the Blind Prophet is obscenely strong for that early on progression. Eventually, when you do get a Nimis though, the Surfcaster does outscale the Blind Prophet, unless you go EE. And I do have an EE variant of this build as well, which I will go over. The reason why the Surfcaster is strong is not even because of the self-chill, it's because 100% lightning damage compared to cold damage allows you to use Heat Shiver and get an insane amount of damage. Glacial Wave is also very strong, 30% increased damage taken by chill effect on enemies, and 15% DR. This Ascendancy will also be really good for hard content because having a consistent source of freeze is extremely good when doing stuff like Rogue Exiles or tier 17 content. So the TLDR basically is that Blind Prophet is just way better for early game, because you don't really need movement speed from Surfcast anyway, while Self Chill is nice and will make you have more attack speed. It just does not make up for the insane amount of power level you get from early on from the Blind Prophet. Later on, once you have better gear or perhaps even Nimis, you can go Surfcaster, because once you get Nimis, the damage of Surfcaster actually does become higher than that of the Blind Prophet, unless you go EE like I said. So yeah, I would definitely start with the Blind Prophet. The crit chance is so good early on. It really frees up your gear requirements of your claw, which is the most expensive piece, and it now becomes extremely cheap, like I showed in the PoB. And yeah, free Nimis, I mean, if you play with Nimis, you know how strong his effect is, and like I explained before, it's just as effective as Nimis for a single target. And if you are wondering how you proc self-chill, if you did want to go Surfcaster, there is 2 things you're pretty much going to need. There's 2 ways to essentially self-chill. You can either do a Whirling Blades, Cast on Crit, Forbidden Right setup, and you would also want Leaf Shade, perhaps even a Nameless Ring as well. If you have Leaf Shade plus a Nameless Ring base, you have a 6-second chill duration, which is pretty reliant for self-chilling. And essentially, when you Whirling Blades to any enemies, your Forbidden Right will cast, it'll damage you, and you'll get a full 30% self-chill effect. And if it's at least 6 seconds duration, like I said with a Nameless Ring, this will be pretty consistent. At 4 seconds, I tested this personally in game. It felt like it was like a 70 to 80% uptime, so it wasn't 100% uptime, but it was a big enough uptime to make it worth taking. So that's how you will self-chill as the Surfcaster. It's because self-chilling early with Forbidden Rite is quite annoying because you need to balance your chaos res. You don't really have chaos res in entry maps, so if you try to self-chill yourself in entry maps, you might just kill yourself. You have like negative chaos res because the damage from Forbidden Rite is based off your own chaos res as well. But yeah, once you get the setup going and once you have a full, self-chill with Nimmies, it becomes extremely strong. You can see in this PoE right here, this is the endgame variant Nimmies. You had 172 million DPS without Tincture. With Tincture, you go to 262 million. Then VLS on top of that, you're going over 300 million DPS. This build, for example, you can kill Ubers in 1 second. I've done it in the past league already with very similar DPS characters. So yeah, this build scales exceptionally well, can do all content in the game very easily. Rogue Exiles, tier 17s. Anyway, let's quickly go over the POB. So I have both a no Savon setup and an endgame Savon setup. And I also have an EE setup as well that I'll go over briefly. But essentially, there's 2 ways to build this character. You can either go to full avoidance Savant setup, or you can build massive ES. So the benefit of the Savant setup over the EE/CI setup is that your EHP is going to be way higher, which is usually really good for mapping. EHP matters way less in Boston content, but for like high-end juice mapping, EHP matters a lot. Generally actually more than max hit. The other benefit is that you still get to chill and freeze with the regular claw Savant setup. If you're playing with EE, you're pure lane damage, so you're not going to chill or freeze. You will get a really high shock, but yeah, you don't really want to play Surfcaster with EE because then you're going to miss the base crit from Blind Prophet, which gives EE this insane amount of damage. You could go Surfcast EE, but then your damage is going to be substantially lower. Essentially, the TLDR is Savant is an overall cheaper setup, and it gives you more DPS than EE and way more EHP. But your max hit is lower, so every now and then you will die, but it gets better and better and better as you get more and more gear, as you can see here. Eventually you do get a respectable 20k Fizz max hit and 74k LA max hit, and then, an insane amount of EHP. Like, I played the setup on Warden, which is way squishier than that of the Surfcaster of Blind Prophet, because you don't have Angie Shield, which you will have as those Ascendancies. This build only had 4.3k life. Nothing else, and it rarely died because yeah, Savon is extremely good in softcore. This shield doesn't make you immortal like people claim, but it definitely makes you extremely tanky and definitely reduces the amount of deaths you have and allows you to essentially sacrifice defense everywhere else on your build, which is why it's strong. You equip this shield and then every other slot can be like full damage. So let's quickly go over the endgame setup. This is a setup I feel like most people can reach. In this variant, you have a triple tier 1 LA Claw, which is pretty easy to make at recomps. There's not a lot of divines. This will cost like probably 2 or 3k alts to make, which is not too bad. And then it's just multi-mod with hits can't be evaded and crit multi. Pretty simple claw. Savalin. Helmet, once again, this is going to be a recoms right here. So suppress, max life, chaos res, dex, ES. And then the rest of the gear is all pretty basic and pretty cheap. I think the only other expensive piece is going to be the chest. This would be a 5 mod recom. Because you really do want a really good chest when you're playing an ES evasion build, which we are right here, 4.2k life and 2k ES, so over 6k effective life, which is pretty nice. The chest is only 3 mods with a crafted mod, extremely cheap. The implicits aren't that good as well. These are 5 mods plus crafted mod and gloves, but you don't need the pierce. You also don't need the increased ES as well. All you'd want in here is resist, attack speed, and flat life. You can get away without having the other affixes there. The boots, once again, these are 5 mod breaks crafted, but only 1 implicit. But once again, you don't need the Moon Speed in this build. Moon Speed is just nice to like walk around, but it doesn't affect your Whirling Blade, so it's not needed. You can skip the Moon Speed on this build. You also don't need to increase Energy Shield as well. It gives you a little more EHP, but once again, not needed whatsoever. Then we have Marlenes and the Tamens. So Tamens are probably around like 2 divines each. Marlenes are like 2 or 3 divines. Marlenes is only a tier 3 unique, while the Tamen has a tier 2 unique recipe. So yeah, these aren't overall that expensive. Tamens do get relatively cheaper as League goes on as well. Then we also have the belt, which is just 4 mods plus a crafted mod. And this strength right here can actually just be crafted like strength intelligence. You don't need actually 60 flat strength. You roughly only need 155 strength, and you can lower the strength requirement as well by lowering your steel skin. So yeah, overall, the items are relatively cheap. The most expensive pieces here are going to be your chest piece and going to be your shield. So Savalin is pretty popular. I'm not sure how expensive it's going to be. It'll probably be roughly that 8 to 10 divine range. So I also do have these cheaper setups as well. Mid game, no Savalin, starter and level 85. So this setup is just no Savalin. It still has the Marlenes and Tamens, but it has a cheaper chest. This is a 3 mod chest for crafted, only 550 ES. A Lycosidite, which is also generally pretty cheap, like 20 or 30 chaos at most in day 1, and a 2 mod crafted claw. You can also make the way better claw as well. So yeah, I do have both setups. Both setups are really high damage. You're just not extremely tanky until you get that Svalin setup. Quickly go over how you reach on block cap with Svalin, and then go over the starter tree as well. So how you block cap with Svalin is pretty easy. You need 2 clusters with Prodigious Defense. This gives you a 4% chance to block spell and attack damage. So I have one right here and one right here. Then you also need a Replica Reckless Defense. This gives you 6% chance to block attack damage and spell block. You need this block wheel right here, and also the block mastery for 1% chance to block spell damage per 5% chance to block attack damage. Then you also need Tempest Shield. Now Tempest Shield will require level 3 Enlighten, while the earlier setup you don't need Enlighten, so do keep that in mind as well. There's an additional cost, but the last thing you need to get block cap is Astley Mountain Amulet Anoint, which is also relatively cheap for Anoint. It's not that expensive whatsoever, and that's it. That's all you need to get block cap. It's relatively really free and really easy. There's not much to it. And the rest of the tree is pretty standard lightning strike stuff. You get crit here, life nodes, you need spell suppress of course. If you're not spell suppress cap, which you do want to be spell suppress cap, if you're not spell suppress cap, make sure you're clicking chance to spell suppress is lucky, but you should be spell cap at this point. You also do take this block now right here for 4% chance to block. As you can see, we are at 89% block and 88% spell block. We're technically 1% block off our block cap. You can get block and a single jewel mod, and that could be worth it as well. But yeah, it's up to you if you want to go for the last 1% block. You know, some more reservation nodes, life nodes, instant leech, extremely important. Instant leech is very strong. And the last 2 things to talk about is Ghost Dance and Soul Thief. So we are a hybrid build, so we do have energy shield, and you do need good ways to recover your energy shield. The best ways to do that is to stack evasion with Ghost Dance and Soul Thief. We are a mapping build, so we recover 2% energy shield on kill. It's pretty reliable. Overall, yeah, your ES sustain is going to be pretty good with these 2 nodes. Do make sure when you go for that ES hybrid chest, you do have these clicked, so there's absolutely no issue whatsoever. While mapping, you'll have really high ES uptime. And to quickly go over the level 85 basic tree. So we're solid on strength with inertia. You do eventually want to get that lethal pride. And if you're wondering, what do you want on lethal pride? Lethal pride, you want 1 rage on melee hit. If you don't have rage on melee hit on your lethal pride, you will need to get rage on your implicit on your gloves. Then after 1 rage on melee hit, you're just looking for as much double damage nodes as possible. Besides double damage, having 1 source of 10% chance to intimidate on hit is also good. But yeah, 1 rage on hit, and then as much DD nodes as possible, and that's all you want on lethal pride. You also use it because it completely solves your strength. As you can see here, it gives you roughly 80 strength. Something to note, you can also grab nodes in Entrench. This gives you 17% spell suppress for 2 points, so if you do need spell suppression, these aren't that bad to grab. You can also grab Survivalist if you do need resist, or you can also use Alira. Alira also is pretty good, as it'll be 1 point for 15% resist. But yeah, that's pretty much for the skill tree. The Svalin Surfer, like I said, this one will need a large set of hope here, or massive set of hope I should say, and you will need Leaf Shade to double the duration of chill on yourself, but you only need this if you're going Surfer. Just go over the starter tree real quick, like I said, inertia for the strength, and then you need Pierce somewhere. So on the starter tree, you probably don't have Implicits yet, or Craft, so you need Pierce on your gloves, or Pierce on your tree. You will get Pierce on your gloves eventually, but you won't have to start. If you don't have to start, you will need Pierce on your tree, or else you won't be double hitting with your Nimus. And besides that, we're just trying to take the most efficient path and efficient nodes, so you don't have access to clusters yet, so this is a very basic, low budget tree. It's only a 2 jewel tree at level 85, and it's also just on a 5 link. I don't think there's much to say here. It's the same stuff as before. If you do need suppression, take Entrench. If you need resist, you can take Alira, or you can take these Survivalist nodes as well right here, because getting resist cap is very important. Now, the last thing I want to go over real quick is the skill gems. So, Val Land Strike, of course, Awaken Wed, or Regular Wed, either or, both work. Trinity, I get this question quite a bit, but to proc Trinity, you only need 2 elements, you don't need 3. And how you can easily see if you're going to proc Trinity is you go to your calculation sheet and you check here. And essentially the TLDR Trinity, as long as the maximum is higher than the minimum of the next element, Trinity will always work. So 170k land damage and then only 90k cold. So this is a very comfy Trinity setup, but you don't need it this much. You need to be a little bit higher. So if my code is 150k minimum and 170k land damage, that would still work. You only need 2 elements for Trinity to work, and you can just check in your calc page to see, okay, is my max of 1 element higher than my min of our next element? If the answer is yes, your Trinity will work in game. It's pretty simple to get going. It's not that confusing, and it's extremely high damage support, so you always want to use it. In fact, it's like the highest CP support in the game for just generic damage. Inspiration for mana cost, this does help. If you're on a 5 link, you'll need inspiration though. And we can add a cold damage or regular add a cold damage. These are generally pretty cheap. Multi-strike, and eventually down the line, Awaken Multi-strike. Then Whirling Blades, Since you're not surf casting yet, you just go for like life tap, whirling blades, fast attack, rage. Just go as fast as possible. Auras are Grace, Wrath, Tempest, Shield, and Enlighten. Before Svalin, you don't need Tempest Shield, which means you also don't need Enlighten. So you got a no Svalin setup, it's just Grace and Wrath. With Svalin, you do want to get Enlighten, and you do want to use Tempest Shield. Then you have Automation, Life Tap, Sealskin, your Assassin's Mark, Life Tap, and Mark on Hit. This is also how you generate your power charges. And also keep in mind, you want a 20 quality Assassin's Mark as fast as possible, because if you don't have quality Assassin's Mark, you don't have a way to generate power charges, so do keep that in mind when you're going crit. Frostblink, Bone Chill, Unbound Elements. This is some nice bonus stats while clearing or on a tier 17 boss where you Frostblink quite a bit. This gives you some free DPS, you might as well have it, you have the links, so you might as well use it. Even if it's not 100% uptime, it is just free damage to use because there's nothing else to use your links. And then a lower precision, just with some bonus crit and accuracy. I also do have this full notes section here as well. It's not that detailed yet, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave it below. I'll update the POV and update questions to the notes section. So always do check the latest version of my POVs, as I usually do update them constantly across the league as long as I'm playing. So yeah, I think that's mostly about it. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. But yeah, this character is extremely strong. It is definitely one of the best, if not the best, league start in the game. Lightning Strike is good. Everyone knows this, but yeah, that's about it.